Hi there, I'm Maura. My family told everyone I died, just so I wouldn't show up at my sister's wedding. Not because I did anything wrong, because I clean offices for a living. They buried my name to protect their image. But what hurt more than the lie was how easily they all agreed to it. Ever wonder what happens when the one they tried to erase walks back into the room? I didn't plan to visit that day. I told myself it was just a drive, just passing through River Forest. But somehow, I ended up pulling into the driveway of the house I used to call home. The azaleas Mom always pruned were in bloom, perfectly trimmed, just like the image she wanted everyone to see. I rang the doorbell. The chime echoed, crisp, cold. She opened the door like she was expecting someone better. "Maura," Clara said, her voice clipped. "Did you call?" "No, I was nearby." I stepped in anyway. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and power moves. Lacey sat at the dining table, papers spread before her like blueprints to a better life. A woman in a sleek pantsuit was pointing at floral arrangements on a tablet. Lacey glanced up. "Oh, hey, didn't know you were in town." "Just came from the office." I smiled tight. "Heard you're getting married?" "Yes, it's been a little crazy." "Must be," I said. "I haven't gotten an invite." The room stalled. The wedding planner glanced between us, suddenly interested in her notes. Clara spoke first. "We've kept things small." I looked at her. "Really?" And then came the sentence. Sharp, polished, practiced. "We told them you died 10 years ago." She said it like a grocery list. I stared, sure I misheard. But Lacey couldn't meet my eyes. My ears rang. "To Richard's family?" I asked. Clara shrugged. "They're very traditional. Appearances matter." "You didn't just uninvite me," I said. "You erased me." "No one needed the complication," she replied. I nodded. Once, slowly. Then I turned and walked out, not slamming the door, not yelling, just gone. The sky was low and gray, like it didn't know how to rain. I stood on the sidewalk, and for a second, I didn't move. The ground didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. 16 years ago, I quit school to help Mom through her chemo. I worked nights, slept in a chair at the hospital. Lacey got into her dream internship while I scrubbed baseboards and swallowed pride. I walked until my legs burned. When I finally got home, my phone buzzed. A message from Amber, a friend from high school. "You okay? Just saw Lacey's post. Thought you two were close." I opened Instagram. There it was, a glossy photo. Lacey in a fitted white dress, laughing with her fiancé. Captioned, "Only daughter, only dream." I felt my stomach tighten. Not from surprise, but from the weight of confirmation. I wasn't just a secret. I was deleted. I didn't cry. I cleaned. I scrubbed the stovetop until my knuckles hurt. Wiped down the baseboards. I rearranged my closet, alphabetized my spice rack, tightened every screw on the cabinet doors. Then I sat down at my desk and pulled out a folder marked HR Schedules. I wasn't sure what I was looking for yet, but I was tired of being the one they could bury. I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked in the center of a blank page. I stared at it for a long time. Maybe this time, silence won't be the answer. The envelope was thick, no stamp, no return address. Just a soft, slow slide under my apartment door while I was brushing my teeth. I didn't rush to check it. I waited, let it sit there on the mat like something toxic. When I finally picked it up, the weight said everything. Heavy, intentional. Inside, crisp bills, mostly hundreds, folded tight and stacked like silence. No note at first, just money. But tucked between two bills, I found a ripped page from a bridal magazine. Highlighted in pink marker was a Vera Wang gown circled twice. On the back, "Use this to take care of yourself, but please don't come." "Mom," I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was classic Clara. Monetize the shame, tie a bow around it, and call it a gift. My presence at the wedding wasn't just inconvenient anymore. It was a liability with a price tag. I didn't scream. I didn't throw it. I walked to the kitchen, opened the freezer, and shoved the envelope deep behind a bag of frozen peas. Cold money belonged where it matched the temperature. The rain outside hadn't stopped since sunrise. The windows fogged with breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My apartment smelled like lemon cleaner and day-old coffee, and still, everything inside me felt unfinished. A ping broke the stillness. A DM from Kendra, a girl I barely spoke to since college. "Hey, you okay with Lacey's post?" I opened Instagram. There it was again, same photo from before. Lacey and Richard, posed like magazine royalty. But this time it had a new badge beneath it. Sponsored. I scrolled and scrolled. Something was off. No comments about me. Nothing like, "Can't wait to see your sister," or "Where's Maura in all this?" Just curated praise. Filters over filters. Then it clicked. She paid to scrub me out. Digital bleach. I screenshotted it. Cropped it clean. Set it as my phone's wallpaper. Let it stare back at me every time I checked the time. Every time I checked myself. Because this wasn't just about hiding me at the wedding. This was erasure. Funded, scheduled, confirmed. I remembered a dinner years ago when Lacey said, "You know how people are, Maura. Nobody wants to hear about mops and bleach when they're drinking $14 cocktails." She didn't mean it as an insult. That's what made it worse. I sat with that thought for hours. Let it soak. At midnight, I opened the freezer. I pulled the envelope out slowly, like unearthing something buried too long. The bills were still stiff, still new. I put them into another envelope, plain, unmarked, and sealed it. No return address, no signature, just a delivery. And then I opened my email. I didn't send anything, just typed a sentence. "You buried me. But I'm still breathing." I saved it to drafts. Then I opened my work calendar and scrolled to mid-May. There it was. Lacey plus Richard's wedding, in my company system, because even ghosts keep schedules. I clicked the box, added a note, "Watch, don't warn." I was reorganizing my closet when the folder fell. A black plastic binder, warped at the edges and dusty, like it hadn't been opened in years. It slid from the top shelf and landed with a dull slap against the hardwood floor. I bent to pick it up, half ready to toss it, until I saw my own handwriting on the first document inside. Transfer. $600. Mom's insurance deductible. I sat down on the floor. The pages were stiff from age, but not so old they were irrelevant. Bank slips, notes, transfers I made. Monthly, sometimes weekly. For her prescriptions, her groceries. One even read, "For Lacey's first car deposit." I flipped through them like someone reviewing their own obituary. Then I remembered the call. A week ago, Amber had mentioned Lacey's spa trip in Switzerland. "Didn't your sister go on that insane retreat like 5 years ago? Yoga, silk sheets, gold facials?" 5 years ago, when Clara told me she was late on utilities. I scanned the receipts again, and something inside me calcified. That money, my money, was never for survival. It was reinvested into someone else's image. I pulled out the most damning line. "Transfer, $1,500, for you, Mom." I stared at it until the words lost shape. I used to believe sacrifice was silent, that the ones you love don't need reminders. I was wrong. That afternoon, I drove across the city to a storage unit Clara had leased years ago when she downsized. I still had the spare key. The woman at the front desk didn't ask questions. The air inside smelled like forgotten wood and mothballs. I ran my hands across boxes labeled Christmas, Kitchen, Family History. I stopped at that last one. Inside were photo albums, brittle documents, a yellowed marriage license. Then I found it, an envelope tucked between old report cards. It was labeled in Clara's precise script, "Final Documentation Maura." At first I didn't understand. The paper was thick. Official. Certificate of Death Maura Elaine Shipman. The date was 10 years ago. A fake accident. A forged notary seal. My birth date 1 digit off. But it was close enough that someone not looking closely wouldn't question it. They didn't just say I was gone. They filed it. I didn't scream. I didn't sob. I took out my phone, snapped a picture, and folded the original with care. I didn't destroy it. Some things deserve to exist, so no one forgets who made them. On the drive home, the buildings blurred together. My hands were cold, even though the air was heavy and still. 16 years ago, I was 17, sitting at our chipped kitchen table, wiring my first paycheck into Clara's account. She put her hand over mine and whispered, "You're the backbone of this family." Now that same hand had signed my death. I walked past my front door and kept going, down the block, around the corners of a neighborhood that never felt like mine. The trees hadn't changed, but I had. Back home, I poured a glass of water and opened the fridge. I reached for the magnet that read Family First, moved it to the center. Then I pinned the certificate beneath it. I stood there for a long time, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. A certificate declaring me dead, and yet I'd never felt more alive. It started with a name I didn't recognize. A woman's voice, polite, sterile, asking if she had reached Maura Shipman. Her tone wasn't curious, it was practiced. "This is Teresa from Anderson Legal Group, calling on behalf of our client," she said. "We're issuing this as a formal notice. Your attendance at the upcoming private event hosted by the Dorn-Bergstrom families may be interpreted as a disruption to a contractually protected event." I didn't respond. I didn't even breathe. "We ask that you acknowledge receipt of this verbal notice," she continued, "and refrain from appearing at the event." I hung up before she finished. Outside my office window, the skyline shimmered under the August heat. Inside, the air conditioning hummed, but my palms were slick with sweat. I stood there, one hand still hovering over the phone, the other clenched so tightly my nails left crescents in my skin. They'd sent a legal warning, a cease and desist dressed in floral language, like I was a problem to be contained, a liability too messy for a linen-wrapped table. I thought maybe Richard's family had pushed for it. I imagined some uptight assistant panicking about scandal. But part of me, quiet and cold, already knew who had made the call. That night, Janelle showed up at my apartment without knocking. She held a printout, creased in the middle. "Got it from a guy I used to intern with," she said. "He owes me." I took it, a PDF, a leaked email, from Lacey B. to andersonteam@legaljarp.com. Subject urgent. "Please send to her directly. We can't let her ruin this for me. Lacey." I sat down, not because I was tired, but because the floor seemed like the only place solid enough to hold what I was carrying. "She hired them," I said quietly. "Not Richard, not his father, Lacey." Janelle sat across from me and didn't say anything, just waited. I should have cried, should have cursed, but I didn't. My laugh came out low, tight, like air squeezed through a crack in concrete. She hadn't just lied, she'd drawn the legal line herself and placed me on the outside of it. "You okay?" Janelle finally asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I am now." After she left, I poured a drink and opened my laptop, created a new folder, labeled it Truth. Then I opened a blank document. Title, Contingency Plan, If I Go. I typed the first sentence. If I show up, I won't be quiet. The cursor blinked under it. Steady, waiting. 16 years ago, Lacey and I drew chalk lines in the driveway. You stay on your side, I'll stay on mine. We'd argue over nothing. Who got the last popsicle? Who got the window seat? But even back then, she'd fight to win, not to understand. Now the line was legal, and printed in court fonts. I stood at the window. The city below moved like nothing had happened. Cars passed, horns blared. Somewhere, someone was probably falling in love. But not here. Not tonight. "If they want silence," I whispered, "they should have killed me for real." Janelle didn't knock. She never did when it was bad. She stood at my door with a manila folder in her hand, wind tangling her hair. "You'll want to see this," she said, stepping inside like she didn't want to give the air time to argue. I took the folder, sat on the couch and opened it. A printed article, archived, local business profile from 22 years ago. The headline was forgettable. "Young father rises through grit," but the photo underneath made my stomach turn. Russell Dorn, in a janitor's jumpsuit, smiling, holding a mop. "He started in a shoe factory," Janelle said, reading over my shoulder. "Used to clean bathrooms before the factory floor opened." The words didn't sting. They didn't need to. They simply rearranged everything I'd been told. The man who stood behind Lacey's shiny engagement, who gave speeches about legacy and appearance, had once scrubbed dirt off warehouse walls. Just like me. Except unlike me, he got to rewrite the ending. I scanned the article, quotes about perseverance, gratitude, nothing about hiding that past. Not then. "He'd judge you for your job," Janelle said softly, while building his empire on the same floor tile. I didn't smile. I just slipped the page into my laptop bag and renamed a folder on my desktop. Backup Power. The next morning at Skyline, I sat in the break room pretending to check emails while the HR department streamed a live internal seminar on workplace legacy and ethics. I knew that voice the second it came through the speaker. Russell. He talked about Dorn Enterprises as a symbol of prestige, a company built on integrity, tradition, excellence. He praised his son for continuing the lineage of leadership. That word, lineage. I opened his LinkedIn, no mention of a janitor's jumpsuit, just a polished history of acquisitions, board appointments, a fabricated path of boardrooms and private equity, whitewashed to match his veneers. Then I found it, a 5-year-old interview on a business podcast. Russell leaning back in a chair, his voice slick and certain. "I come from a long line of real estate investors," he said. "This kind of work, it's in my blood. No mention of the mop, no trace of the factory, no nod to grit or working-class struggle. That part had been filed away like it never happened. He buried himself before he buried me. Back at home, I printed the article and the interview transcript. I laid them side by side on my kitchen table. One truth, one lie. And for the first time when I looked at them, I didn't feel ashamed. I didn't feel small. I felt dangerous. 16 years ago, Clara told me, "No one respects the help." She said it over dinner, between bites of steak I'd cooked. I'd just gotten promoted to senior custodian at the time. I remember telling her I was proud. I remember the silence that followed. Now, standing in my kitchen, I looked at my reflection in the oven door. "No one respects the help," I said, mimicking her tone. Then louder, to myself. "Then teach them how to." I scanned the documents one more time, saved both as PDFs, then attached them to an anonymous email addressed to Russell's executive assistant. Subject line, "You forgot your roots. I won't." I arrived before the sun had fully claimed the sky. The kind of morning that looked clean but carried weight in the air, like something was about to break but hadn't yet decided how. The executive floor was quiet, still. Just me, my cleaning cart, and the hum of early ambition. I liked that hour. When the glass still held smudges, and the light hadn't turned artificial yet. I was checking the polished streaks on the corner table when I heard a voice behind me. Crisp, familiar, measured. "Didn't expect to see someone already at work." I turned, slowly. Russell Dorn, suit pressed to precision, a to-go coffee in one hand. Surprise barely touching his expression. I nodded once. "Some things don't clean themselves." He studied me for a second longer than polite. "You're thorough." "I'm paid to be." "I admire that," he said, then paused. "Work ethic matters more than title, at least to me." I didn't smile, just met his eyes. He didn't flinch, and then he was gone. Down the hallway, past the boardroom, carried off by elevator silence. I stood still, barely breathing, not because of awe, but because something sharp had shifted. A man who'd built empires off image had just acknowledged mine. Not my name, not my background, just the work. I filed that moment away, carefully. That night, Janelle messaged me, a screenshot, an internal memo forwarded from someone in Dorn's assistant pool. FYI, Mr. Dorn requested personnel files on Maura Shipman, Skyline Ops, also requested 60th floor security logs from 2 weeks ago. I stared at the message. He was connecting dots. He'd seen the recognition award on my badge. He remembered something. Maybe the name, maybe the tone. He wasn't asking out loud, but he was asking. I didn't panic. I opened the drawer beside my desk and pulled out a thick black folder. On the cover in bold Sharpie, Evidence vertical bar witness vertical bar strategy. Inside were the files I'd collected over the past month. A scan of my forged death certificate. Lacey's only daughter ad campaign. Clara's handwritten note with cash attached. The email to the lawyer. The story no one wanted, but now someone might finally read. I pulled out my old Skyline Recognition Award. 5 years ago. Team leadership. 0 sick days. Highest tenant satisfaction. I flipped it over. Wrote one sentence on the back in neat print. It's easier to erase a name than face the truth. I don't do easy. The next morning, I slid the plaque into an inner office envelope and left it on Russell's assistant's desk. No return address, no note, no threat, just the truth, packaged. By noon, I saw him again. He didn't speak, but as we passed in the hall, he slowed, and for just a moment he looked at me. Not like I was a shadow, not like I was a problem to solve. He looked at me like a puzzle he should have solved long ago. I kept walking, shoulders square. No fear in my step. I don't do easy. I arrived at the Langham 5 minutes before the ceremony. The valet didn't ask my name. He just opened the door like I belonged there. Inside, chandeliers caught the light like secrets waiting to shatter. The air smelled like peonies and champagne. People turned when I stepped into the lobby, some with confusion, others with calculation. No one spoke. But the silence stretched like smoke. My heels echoed against marble floors. Ballroom doors loomed ahead. I could hear laughter through them, glass clinking, a violin warming up. I pushed them open. The music stopped. Clara turned first. Her face fell so quickly it almost didn't look real. Lacey's bouquet slipped from her hands. Someone gasped. Maybe two people. And then Russell Dorn stood. "You're not dead after all," he said flatly, voice carrying across the room like judgment. Every eye was on me now. I felt none of it. He continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is Maura Shipman. Her family told us she died in an accident 10 years ago. That was a lie." Lacey stepped forward. Dad, I was trying to protect..." "Protect what?" Alden cut in, voice like frost. "The wedding? Or the illusion?" He looked at her like he didn't know who she was. Then he took one step back. That was all. Clara clutched her pearls like something holy had been ripped out of her. I took a breath. "You wanted a daughter with no dirt under her nails, so you buried the one who did the cleaning." No one moved. A murmur rose from the back. And somewhere in the corner, a phone glowed. Recording. I didn't care. Lacey sat down hard on a nearby chair, mascara streaking down porcelain skin. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I turned, walked out. Outside, the sun was blinding. The city went on like it didn't just witness a funeral for a lie. Behind me, the glass doors opened again. Russell followed. No words, just a nod. Regret in his eyes, maybe respect. That was enough. I kept walking. By the time I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A DM. Username, @truthmovesfast. "You just became every working woman's hero, thank you." I didn't answer. I locked my phone, tucked it into my coat pocket, and kept walking. The envelope was waiting on my desk when I arrived. No postage, no courier label, just my name, printed in clean black letters on heavyweight cream paper. The kind of envelope that doesn't beg attention, it demands it. I opened it slowly, not out of fear, but because I wanted to feel every crease give. Inside, a handwritten note. Russell's penmanship. Firm, neat, a little too perfect. "Maura, I was wrong. We all were. You didn't embarrass this family. You reminded us what character looks like when stripped of performance. If you're willing, I'd like you to lead something new, something real. A position has been created. Director of Facilities Integrity across our portfolio. Because no one understands that role like you do. No more hiding, no more pretending. Respectfully, Russell Dorn." I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I placed the letter beside the old plaque I kept near my window. Skyline's recognition award from years ago, dusty, forgotten. They'd given me that for unmatched reliability. This felt different. This was for being impossible to ignore. The office they assigned me was one floor below Russell's. Clean, bare, all glass. I stepped in quietly, like I was trespassing on someone else's future. Janelle met me there with 2 coffees, no small talk. She slid the letter across the table again, smirking. "So they know who you are now?" I shook my head. "No. Now they know who they tried to erase." She looked proud, but not surprised. Then she pulled out her phone and opened the Dorn Foundation's new scholarship site. Right at the top, a banner image pulled from the viral wedding video. Me, standing at the center of the chaos, unsmiling, unmoved. Below it, the caption, "Dignity never needed defending." The scholarship was called the Shipman Fund, supporting women in custodial and maintenance careers. I didn't ask for that, and maybe that's why it mattered. Weeks later, I was asked to speak at a small internal conference. Not a keynote, not a headline, just a 5-minute intro to a roundtable about workplace integrity. I wrote 3 sentences and said only one. I was told once that I should disappear, that I didn't fit, but I never asked to fit. I built. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was solid, certain. Before I could sit down, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, already knowing who it would be. Lacey. Subject, dinner? Just us. I didn't respond. Not yet. The living room was dark except for the TV glow. A news anchor was talking about the Shipman Fund again. National headlines, featured in Forbes, NPR, even a segment on the Today Show. An icon of dignity, they called me. But sitting there in sweats, barefoot, hair undone, I didn't feel like anyone's icon. I felt quiet, not empty, just still. The world had moved on, celebrated, reposted. Clara hadn't called, not a text, not a single word. Maybe silence was her version of shame. Russell had stepped down from the board. He was mentoring now, they said. He'd issued a single statement to the press after the wedding. Brief, direct. Transparency begins at home. It didn't mention my name, which was fine, because mine was now on every screen in the building. Later that week, I walked into the cafe in Lincoln Park 15 minutes early. Lacey had asked for dinner. I hadn't decided if I'd stay. Her message was still in my inbox. Please, just a meal. I need to say it to your face. I ordered a black coffee, no milk, no sugar. Sat by the window. She arrived 5 minutes late. No designer dress. Just jeans, a wool coat, and a face that looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Hi, she said, voice brittle. Hi. She sat down without waiting to be invited. I didn't come here to defend myself, she started. I didn't know how to stop lying without losing everything. I nodded slowly. You didn't just lie, Lacey. You made me disappear. She didn't argue. That was new. I told them you were dead because I thought if they knew about you, they'd look at me differently, she said. I didn't think they'd want someone with a janitor sister. They didn't even ask. We sat in silence for a long while. The waitress came. We both ordered soup. It was the easiest thing to eat while your throat threatened to close. After the check came, she looked at me carefully. Do you think there's a future for us? I met her eyes. There's a past we never dealt with. Maybe that's where we start. Later that night, I walked back into my apartment. The air smelled like cinnamon and clean counters. I passed the fridge. The death certificate was still there. Creased, curling at the edges. I didn't tear it down. Instead, I took out my new business card. Crisp, white, raised lettering, Maura Shipman. Director Facilities Integrity, Dorn Enterprises. I pinned it right beside the certificate. Not to cover it, but to finish the story. This wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Sometimes survival looks like silence. But healing? Healing starts the moment you stop letting other people write your story. For a long time, I let my worth be defined by what others were willing to admit out loud. I worked quietly, loved fiercely, and carried weight that didn't belong to me. But dignity doesn't come from titles, or money, or polished lies. It comes from showing up, especially when they don't want you to. Maybe you've been overlooked, dismissed. Maybe someone made you feel small just because they didn't understand your strength. If that's you, don't disappear. Take up space. Say your name, again and again, until the room echoes it back with respect. And now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice in a place where you were told to stay quiet? What would you say now that you couldn't say then? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story resonated with you, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to connect. And if you didn't love this video, I want to know why. Every story is a conversation. If this reached your heart, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Your voice matters here. Let's keep telling stories that do too.